we're focusing on are people who have natural pre-birth memories. They have memory of being born. They have memory of being in mother's womb. They have memory of their biological conception, memory of their existence as pure soul. And these memories have been with them their entire life. They were not elicited through some outside therapy or regression hypnosis, although those are other ways that these memories can be accessed. But we decided to focus on these people who came in with these memories intact. So what can this taboo subject of pre-birth memories teach us about higher states of consciousness? What we're finding is that we're not learning anything new today. In fact, modern psychology has a long way to go to catch up with what the ancient psychologists and sages taught us, what they cognized in the past. And to begin with, in the Buddhist tradition, they talk about 4 levels of pre-birth consciousness. From someone who has 100% memory while they're in the womb through the birth process and onward, they remember who they are, they remember why they were born, what they're coming to do in this earthly life. That was with them throughout the whole journey. And then we have gradations of that down to someone that has no memory of that. They recognize the person who has full conscious memory, full pre-birth memory, as a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is someone who lives in the spirit of love, compassion, patience, generosity. And we can even go further back in history, even before the time of Buddha. And we find that this ancient sage, thousands of years before the Buddha, Maharishi Patanjali, who wrote the Yoga Sutras, and you might think, oh, Yoga Sutras, that's about doing some exercises, but there's only 2 or 3 verses in the whole text that have anything to do with physical exercise. He was a great psychologist who understood the human mind. He understood from abnormal levels of thinking to the highest, to the peak, so the full range of human expression. And in this particular text, which is considered the Bible of human consciousness, he speaks of pre-birth memories as being superpowers, super abilities, a sign of human excellence. So what we are finding by looking back in history, particularly the Eastern tradition of spirituality, is that pre-birth memories have been recognized as elevated states of consciousness. Whereas here in the West, we know very little, and we're starting to learn more, but we know very little about the journey of our soul. In fact, in the last 1,500 years, this subject has been considered something to fear, and there's been a lot of confusion and skepticism surrounding it. We'll begin with Lorenzo Caravella. And he also had 3 near-death experiences. Lorenzo describes his pre-birth experience as his senses all rolled up into one sense of being. He said, you don't really see, hear, taste, touch, yet everything exists for you. And it was an experience where he felt totally unattached, and everything was oneness, a unity. He also describes this vortex of creation, and that when he came into this incarnation, that he came in through this vortex. And in his 3 near-death experiences, he said he traveled the opposite way through that vortex. So he said it was like being born 3 times into the same body, and each lifetime was a huge transformation. And he preferred to use the word transmigration to describe the experience. He said he chose these 3 near-death experiences. That was part of his pre-birth plan. And he said he did that because each of those near-death experiences took care of one lifetime of karma. And so he said he just wanted to end this cycle of being born and birth and death over and over, which he recalled lifetimes of. And so he chose 3 times to have this experience. The next person is a mother of 6 children. Her name is Summer, and she remembers past lives, and she also had a near-death experience right at the time of coming out the birth canal, and you can read the details of that in our book. And she recalls coming from pure light, a dimension of pure light in between lives, and she describes herself and says, my individuality was barely audible, yet I had a subtle feeling of myself. There was still a subtle minus identity, ego, and individuality. I also felt the presence of God, of not being one with God, but being in God's womb, so to speak. Now let's go to India, and we have Prashant, who remembers his past life. Actually, it was like in the 1600s in Europe, and he was a monk, a Christian monk. And then he remembers the interlife period and coming back into this incarnation. It's very interesting how he describes his memory. He said it's like Google Earth, where you're zooming in closer and closer and closer. And he said he was aware he didn't have a body. He was just a point of consciousness. And when he got about 100 feet above the ground, his attention was drawn to a happy couple. They were holding hands and singing in a marketplace. And he zoomed in closer and closer to the woman. And he entered her womb. He remembers the clothing they were wearing. The mother was wearing an orange traditional Indian sari, and the father was wearing a light blue sweater and blue jeans. When he came into the womb, he said he looked up at his mother, and it was as if he was in a swimming pool, and he was looking up through a luminescent fluid. So he was born with this memory and thought, well, what is this? Is this some dream? He didn't talk about it until he was 17. And he sat down with his parents and shared his memories. And they were totally shocked because when the couple was 4 months pregnant, they were wearing those exact clothes. They remember the exact date. It was a friend's engagement ceremony that they had been to, and it's the only time they held hands and sung a song in the South Delhi Extension Marketplace. So Prashant said, what a time for my soul to enter. Next, we have Beverly Anderson. Beverly was born with pre-birth memories and past life memories. They were just kind of bubbling up in childhood. She would wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and see a white face and a white body and say, what is this? I'm used to being in a big dark body and male, and she couldn't relate. Or she would wake up in the morning in bed and say, well, where are the servants? Where's my breakfast? So she had remembered many glorious lifetimes. Her memory was brought to a complete fruition through a near-death experience at the age of 8. So she had some memories, but at the age of 8, she was riding a horse, galloping, and thrown off the horse. Her head hit a rock, thrown off, and she was in the hospital in a coma for 3 days. During that NDE, she said, I saw all of my costumes. And Neil will talk about some of the costumes, some of the lifetimes. She saw the different lifetimes. She saw the interlife planning between those lifetimes. I said, Beverly, how far back does your memory go? I remember coming from the all that is as a projectile of light. I remember being spat out, pushed like a projectile, and I was screaming through the universe like a little spark of light, a little star. I clearly remember stars whizzing by, but there was no sensation of movement. There was no density, no up, down, no left, no right, no time, no sensations of colors, sound, or heat. I knew I was going somewhere. I didn't know where. I just felt sheer exhilaration, unlimited possibilities, that desire to explore. And when I first encountered these pre-birth memories, when I first started interviewing and hearing them, they were not totally unfamiliar. They were not foreign to me because at that time in my life, I had already been meditating many years and actually teaching a meditation technique for 18 years. So I was familiar with these higher states of consciousness, not in the context of pre-birth, of course, that was a new, but to have the experience during a particular meditation. And in meditation, one experiences transcending beyond the thoughts, beyond the thinking mind, to experience the pure soul state. And in some cases, people experience pure light. If you're interested, our recommendation is, if you haven't had a pre-birth experience, is to set aside time on a regular basis and practice a daily meditation. Meditation is a very good tool for opening up your intuition, opening up your awareness to higher realities, to who you really are.